Chapter 1: First Impressions. In the quaint village of Longbourn, nestled amidst rolling green hills and picturesque meadows, the Bennet family resided in a charming countryside estate. Mr. Bennet, the head of the family, was a gentleman of few words, often found lost in the pages of a beloved novel within the confines of his library. Mrs. Bennet, on the other hand, was a woman of lively nerves and unceasing activity. Her singular mission in life was to see her 5 daughters happily married, and she was determined to achieve this goal with the zeal of a general planning a campaign. The Bennet family consisted of 5 daughters each, with her own distinct charm and disposition. Jane, the eldest, was universally regarded as the most beautiful. Her golden locks and serene countenance earned her admiration from all who crossed her path. Jane possessed a gentle nature that endeared her to everyone she met. Elizabeth, the second daughter, was a contrast to her elder sister. Her expressive brown eyes sparkled with intelligence and wit. Quick to laugh and quicker to engage in a spirited debate, she had a mind of her own and a spirit that refused to be easily subdued. The younger Bennet sisters, Mary, Catherine, Lydia. Mary took solace in her books. Kitty often followed her younger sister Lydia's reckless escapades, and Lydia, the youngest of them all, possessed an unyielding spirit of adventure. Life in the Bennet household was an exercise in balancing the competing desires of the vivacious daughters and their more reserved parents. While Mr. Bennet found solace in his library, Mrs. Bennet's days were consumed by a fervent quest to secure advantageous marriages for her daughters. Her own nerves, prone to agitation, often set the tone for the household, creating an atmosphere of perpetual excitement. It was in this lively household that the news of a new neighbor's arrival reverberated like a clap of thunder on a clear day. Mr. Charles Bingley, a wealthy and amiable gentleman from the city, had leased the grand estate of Netherfield Park. His arrival sent tremors of excitement throughout Longbourn, for it was a widely held belief that a single man of large fortune must be in want of a wife. Mrs. Bennet, seizing upon this opportunity, was determined to make the most of it. She eagerly embarked on a mission to ensure that one of her daughters would secure Mr. Bingley's heart. Jane's natural beauty and gentle disposition made her the prime candidate, and Mrs. Bennet wasted no time in engineering their first meeting. The Meryton Assembly was the setting for this fateful encounter. It was a bustling event, attended by the cream of local society. Jane, adorned in her loveliest attire, drew admiring glances from all who beheld her. Mr. Bingley, struck by her radiant beauty, found himself captivated by her grace and charm. They danced together, and their connection was evident to all. Yet, amid the swirling gowns and bustling conversations, another connection was forming, one that would prove to be as potent as it was challenging. Elizabeth, never one to shy away from a spirited discussion, found herself paired with a stranger who appeared to stand in stark contrast to the amiable Mr. Bingley. This stranger was Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy, a man whose proud demeanour and aloofness did little to endear him to the gathered company. Elizabeth, ever quick to form an opinion, couldn't help but perceive him as a man of insufferable pride. Their exchange was marked by sharp, witty dialogue, a verbal sparring that set the tone for their future interactions. As the night waned and the assembly drew to a close, the village of Longbourn buzzed with anticipation. Jane's budding connection with Mr. Bingley seemed to promise happiness, while Elizabeth's first impressions of Mr. Darcy hinted at a complicated and challenging acquaintance. The stage was set, and the story of love, pride, and prejudice was about to unfold, with the vibrant Bennet family and their new neighbours at its heart. Chapter 2: An Unexpected Proposal. In the days following the Meryton Assembly, the arrival of Mr. Bingley at Netherfield Park brought with it a flurry of social events. His easy manners and amiable disposition endeared him to the villagers of Longbourn, and he found himself invited to numerous gatherings, often accompanied by his close friend, Mr. Darcy. Jane's acquaintance with Mr. Bingley deepened, their interactions characterized by a growing mutual affection. Mrs. Bennet was beside herself with delight, for it seemed that the handsome and wealthy Mr. Bingley had taken a sincere interest in her eldest daughter. Jane's happiness was infectious, spreading warmth and joy throughout the Bennet household. Elizabeth, however, found herself increasingly perplexed by her own feelings. While Mr. Darcy's haughty demeanour had initially repelled her, she couldn't help but be intrigued by the enigmatic man. His intelligence and quiet confidence left a lingering impression, even as his behaviour continued to puzzle her. One crisp afternoon, as Elizabeth strolled through the garden at Longbourn, her solitude was interrupted by the approach of Mr. Darcy. In a voice tinged with a hint of vulnerability, he began to speak of matters of great importance. To Elizabeth's astonishment, Mr. Darcy declared his love for her. He acknowledged her wit, her beauty, and the way she had captured his heart. But as he spoke, it became evident that his pride had not lessened. In fact, his proposal was marked by a condescending tone, as he mentioned his struggle to overcome his reservations about her family's lack of social standing. Elizabeth, taken aback and wounded by his words, could not accept such a proposal. Her sense of self-worth and independence were too strong to tolerate a love so marred by condescension. She responded with a firm and heartfelt rejection, expressing her belief that happiness in marriage should be based on mutual respect and admiration, not on a sense of superiority. Mr. Darcy, stunned by her refusal, left her presence, his pride wounded. Elizabeth, left alone in the garden, grappled with a tumult of emotions. She had rejected a wealthy and eligible suitor, but her heart told her that it was the right decision. Her self-respect and principles were more valuable to her than a love tainted by arrogance. As the days turned into weeks, both Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy found themselves in a state of inner turmoil. Their brief and tumultuous encounter left a lasting mark on both of them, and they were destined to meet again. Love, pride, and prejudice had set the stage for a complex and challenging romance, one that would test the boundaries of societal expectations and individual integrity. Chapter 3: A Change of Heart. The rejection by Elizabeth weighed heavily on Mr. Darcy's mind. He had rarely encountered a woman who possessed both the intelligence to challenge him and the integrity to reject his condescending proposal. Elizabeth's words echoed in his thoughts, causing him to reflect on his own pride and arrogance. As Mr. Darcy grappled with his emotions, he made an unexpected decision. He sought solitude at his grand estate, Pemberley, hoping that time away from society would provide clarity. Pemberley, nestled amidst rolling hills and lush landscapes, stood as a testament to his wealth and social standing. It was a place of tranquility, where he could contemplate his actions and the woman who had stirred his heart. Meanwhile, Elizabeth returned to Longbourn, her rejection of Mr. Darcy causing mixed emotions. She believed she had upheld her principles, but she couldn't deny a growing curiosity about the man. Despite his pride, there was something about him that intrigued her. She questioned whether she had been too hasty in her judgment. The Bennet family, too, found themselves in a state of anticipation. News arrived that Mr. Bingley and Mr. Darcy were returning to Netherfield Park, and their imminent arrival set the household abuzz. Mrs. Bennet was hopeful that Jane's connection with Mr. Bingley would be rekindled, while Elizabeth's inner conflict remained hidden. When Mr. Bingley called upon Longbourn, it was evident that his feelings for Jane had not diminished. His affectionate attentions left no doubt that he remained enamored with her. Jane's own feelings were equally steadfast, and their reunion brought immense joy to the Bennet family. Yet, it was Mr. Darcy's arrival that set the household on edge. Elizabeth, unsure of her own feelings, was anxious about facing the man she had so vehemently rejected. To her surprise, Mr. Darcy's demeanor had transformed. He was more approachable, more considerate, and devoid of the arrogance that had marked their previous encounters. During an unanticipated encounter in the garden, Mr. Darcy expressed his gratitude to Elizabeth for her honesty and her role in sparking his self-reflection. His humility and genuine remorse touched her heart. She found herself drawn to this changed man, his vulnerabilities exposing a depth of character she had not expected. The growing connection between Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy was undeniable, but the shadow of their previous encounter still loomed over them. Would they be able to overcome their past misunderstandings and societal expectations to find happiness together? The story of love, pride, and prejudice was taking an unexpected turn, promising new beginnings and the possibility of a love that transcended both pride and prejudice. Chapter 4: Love's Triumph. As weeks turned into months, the relationship between Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy continued to evolve. Their interactions were marked by a newfound understanding, born out of humility and introspection. Mr. Darcy's pride had given way to a sincere desire to win Elizabeth's heart, while Elizabeth found herself drawn to the changed man before her. Yet, their budding connection remained a carefully guarded secret. The Bennet family was unaware of the transformation occurring within Mr. Darcy, and Elizabeth was uncertain of her own feelings. She questioned whether her heart could truly overcome the lingering wounds of their initial encounter. In the midst of this emotional turmoil, the local society was once again set abuzz by the announcement of a ball at Netherfield Park. It was an event eagerly anticipated by all, and the Bennet family received invitations, as did the esteemed Mr. Darcy. The prospect of seeing him again left Elizabeth both anxious and intrigued. The night of the ball arrived, and the Bennet sisters prepared with a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Jane, resplendent in her finest gown, was eager to reunite with Mr. Bingley. Elizabeth, however, found herself preoccupied with thoughts of Mr. Darcy. She wondered whether their renewed acquaintance would lead to further understanding, or if the barriers of pride and prejudice would prove insurmountable. As the ball unfolded, Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy found themselves repeatedly drawn into conversation. Their exchanges were marked by a depth of feeling and unspoken emotion. It was during a quiet moment in the garden that Mr. Darcy, unable to contain his emotions any longer, confessed his enduring love for Elizabeth. His declaration was heartfelt and sincere, devoid of the arrogance that had marred his previous proposal. Elizabeth, her heart deeply moved, found herself overwhelmed by her own emotions. In that moment, she acknowledged her own love for Mr. Darcy, a love that had blossomed despite the odds. Their union marked a triumph over the societal expectations and prejudices that had once threatened to keep them apart. Love had prevailed, not in spite of their flaws and imperfections, but because of them. They had learned that true love was not about pride or social standing, but about recognizing the worth of the individual before them. The news of their engagement sent shockwaves through Longbourn, where the gossips had long speculated about the fate of Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth. The Bennet family, too, received the news with a mixture of surprise and joy. Jane and Mr. Bingley's own happiness was now complete, as they witnessed the union of their beloved sister and Mr. Darcy. As the story of love, pride, and prejudice drew to a close, it was clear that love had triumphed over the barriers that had once seemed insurmountable. Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy's journey had been one of growth, introspection, and the transformation of two proud hearts into one united by love, a love that would endure the test of time. The end. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more.